Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. My name is Nate and I recently made a video talking about all of the series that I'm currently in the middle of. This was a much bigger list than I was anticipating. However, I have actually finished some series. It's a much smaller list with only 11 current series being on there, but I thought I would talk about the series that I've finished, and these are mostly series that I've finished since getting back into reading in like 2021, so not including anything that I read as a kid, more just ones that I've kind of read mostly influenced from bookish spaces online. So let's go through those 11 series. I have also DNF'd a bunch of series, so I will be making a video separate on that, and I've actually DNF'd more series than I've finished. Yeah, which, that's fine. So yeah, I'll make a video on all of this DNF series as well, but this is the series that I have finished. And I'm going to kind of go through the ones that I started the lot of the furthest to go. So not necessarily completed, but like when I first read the first book. So starting with a trilogy, and that is the Howl's Moving Castle trilogy. This is by Diane Wynne Jones and is a somewhat classic middle grade series. The first book is probably the most famously known because it has a Japanese anime movie about it, which is a fantastic movie and is quite different from the book. I was quite surprised. The first book in this Howl's Moving Castle, so Howl's Moving Castle, I think the third one's called The House of Many Ways, and I can't quite remember what the second one's called. And I think my enjoyment of the series probably goes in that order, with Howl's Moving Castle being my favourite, and then The House of Many Ways being my least favourite of the series. Yeah, this is a kind of interesting fantasy middle grade series, and the characters from Howl's Moving Castle kind of go throughout all three of the books, but they aren't the main characters in all three books, and each of the books in the series do have their own storylines. They weren't fantastic, I'll be honest. I don't think Diane Wynne Jones's writing style is for me personally. It's a very rambly writing style. I haven't read a ton of classic middle grade, but it kind of has that feeling of stories I would have read when I was younger. But I think I've definitely not my preference in terms of writing style, so I probably won't read much else from her. But I did quite enjoy the Howl's Moving Castle book and have got a gorgeous one of that in my collection. But yeah, the other two in the series were just okay. I think Howl's Moving Castle though was the best. Then I have the book series that technically kind of kicked me back into reading as an adult in 2021, and that is the I Am Number 4 series. This is a 7-book YA sci-fi series about a group of technically, I guess, aliens that have come to Earth in hiding and are being hunted. They are these 9 kids that have inherited the powers from their planet, and they are being tracked down and killed, but in number order, because they have a specific magic curse. They have a specific power that basically they can't be killed and out of order as long as they're kept apart from each other. So they are separated throughout Earth, living in different places, and are slowly being picked off. Our main character from the first book is 4, John Smith, I think his name is, very creative, but 4, and at the beginning of the first book, number 3 is killed, and so 4 knows he is next. And this had a movie as well, which I actually did quite enjoy the movie, but it wasn't, it didn't hit. It came around in that big kind of YA massive craze, but yeah, it didn't land, so it never got a sequel, but I did quite enjoy the movie. The book series goes a lot further, 7 books in total. I just really liked this series. It's one I definitely will read again. It has more in the universe that I intend to kind of delve into at some point, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. I do think in book 2, felt like for me personally, it introduced a bit of what I would consider an unnecessary love triangle, but it ends up petering off a bit, so it definitely has those elements of like the kind of like angsty romance section in these books, or like age range that it is aimed at, but I think it kind of becomes a little bit less annoying as the series goes on and the world really expands. You meet more of the other numbers. The stakes end up getting quite high that it ends up becoming like a global Earth issue. The US military ends up getting involved. Loads of different countries ends up getting involved. Like the planet ends up getting invaded by these aliens. The stakes get massive, and like the scope of the world really expands, and I just really enjoyed it. And I think it was a very well concluded 7-book series as well, to the point where I'm not quite sure what the sequels are going to be about. I haven't read anything about them because I do, when I get to them, eventually want to be surprised. Then I have a book series that I technically also put on my like continued series, but in terms of like, again, individual series, I have completed this one, and that is the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. This is the original 5-book middle grade series, and yeah, really enjoyed them. I never read them as a kid, so this was my first time experiencing them was as an adult, and I really enjoyed them. Their book series is about a group of kids that are essentially demigods, and they go to a camp called Camp Half-Blood, where they are just learning about their powers and having to fight monsters, and again, things end up happening that end up like being quite like monumental for the world. And yeah, a lot of people know about Percy Jackson, but yeah, really enjoyed this as a first time read. Definitely a series that I will be rereading again, and was just really enjoyable. Really enjoyed the writing style, really enjoyed the characters, and really enjoyed the Greek god element as well to it, something that I think has always been very interesting. So it was really interesting to see how those characters are represented throughout Percy Jackson and what they kind of bring to the story. Then this book series is technically like two different series as well as a novella, but it's all in the same world, and that is the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black. This is an original trilogy as well as a sequel duology, and then there was two kind of novellas, and I've read them all. I listened to all of them through audiobook through my library, and the original trilogy I ended up actually really enjoying as a kind of set trilogy. I really liked the conclusion of it. I really liked Jude as our main character and the kind of elements she faced. This is essentially a book series about a young girl, Jude, who is human, raised in the human world. However, her mum ends up getting killed by a fae, and her sisters end up getting kidnapped and taken to this fae. The fae is not quite her stepdad, but her older sister's biological father. So they end up getting raised from, I think they were about 6, in the Fae world, and she's trying to find their place in this world as mortals. They are bullied a lot, they are looked down on a lot. The way that this plot develops was something I actually really enjoyed. It's definitely less on the romance side and more on the fantasy side, and I did really enjoy Jude's journey and growth as a character, the kind of things that she ended up doing. I enjoyed the story as a whole. I really didn't enjoy the Lost Sister novella. This is about Taryn. I wouldn't have read it if I knew it was about her, because I cannot stand her. That was the thing I liked the least about the original trilogy, was Taryn as a character. That is Jude's twin sister. I hated her. I thought she was awful. Really didn't like her. Didn't enjoy her story. Didn't really like the resolution of her story as well. A lot of it was off scene, and it felt very undeserved. Like, it felt very, I would have liked different all the way it went. So her as a character I don't like. So if anything ever comes out more in this world about Taryn, I wouldn't be reading it. There was a novella as well about Carden. That was fine. I didn't mind that one. That was whatever. And then it had a sequel duology, a different character. I won't say who, as it would be spoiler it. I liked the first book in this duology. This is about a female character. I really liked her perspective. However, in the second book, you switch to her love interest, the male character's perspective. And for some reason, the second book really didn't work for me, because I felt like the duology was about this girl's story. I found her story really interesting. And then I felt like because we switched POVs in the second book, it really took the focus away from her story. And so we didn't then get to see it fully fleshed out and concluded, and instead we were following him, and I just really didn't enjoy it as much. I don't know if I would reread it to maybe give it a second chance, because I liked the first book, but I just really didn't enjoy the second one in that duology. But this is a world that I have completely read, and did enjoy the initial trilogy a lot. Probably would reread that in the future as well. Especially a lot of these that I have listened to on audiobooks, I do then think I would like to reread physically, because I do sometimes think I take things in differently from listening to them and reading them, and the way that I would necessarily interpret characters and what they've gone through is different. So I do think I want to do that in the future for some of these. Then I have the Shadow and Bone duology by Leigh Bardugo. This is a fantasy YA about a young girl who thinks that in a world where these things called the Grisha, they have power to do different things, and she doesn't think she has any powers, but then it turns out that she does, but she's actually something very different. It's quite complicated, so I won't go too much into it, but I did actually really enjoy this core trilogy. I know a lot of people don't like this as much as they like the Six of Crows duology. It's much more of a hyped up series, but this core as a core fantasy YA trilogy I really like, and I really liked the conclusion of it as well, which I don't think is always a popular opinion, but I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the romance that went on throughout this. So it did in the second book in particular get kind of, again, the end of the world, this end of the world, or world big war stuff's happening while this teenage angsty romance is also happening, is definitely sometimes a bit of a correlation that doesn't always work for me. But I can also empathize that they are teenagers in this, going through this while also having these romance issues. So sometimes the drama of that romance stuff does seem a bit inconsequential to the wider stakes, but I can empathize a bit that they are teenagers still. And I think, I just enjoyed this trilogy. I really like the magic system and the world that Leigh Bardugo created, and something I am carrying on with in the Six of Crows duology and eventually the King of Scars duology. Then we have one which I did technically talk about in my Carrying On With series, but I have since finished it, and that is the Legends and Latte trilogies by Travis Baldree. This is a trilogy of kind of standalones that are cozy adult fantasy books. Our first book and the second book have the same main character, and then the third book is about a character you meet in the second book, and it kind of goes first book, and then there's a prequel, and then there's a sequel to both of those books. I think my reading preference order is book 2, book 3, and then book 1. I actually think I liked Legends and Latte the least out of the trilogy, which I don't think is a very popular opinion. I think people prefer Legends and Lattes, but Book of Monos was my favourite, and I think after having just recently finished the third book, at the beginning I wasn't that into it, but as it went on, I enjoyed it more as I went on. These are all ones that I read by audiobook, and they're not actually, no, I physically read the first one, and then I listened to the audiobook of the second two, and they're not ones that I think I probably would reread in the future, but I will carry on if Travis Baldree brings anything out again. I will carry on with it, but they're not like standout favorites for me that I will like know that I'll love and reading on a second time. They were just like enjoyable in the moment, but not ones that I probably will ever reread. Then we have the book series that is probably one of my favorite series of all time, and that is the How to Train a Dragon series. This is a 12-book middle grade series by Cressida Cow. I listened to the audiobook for 11 of these. I read the first one, and David Tennant does the audiobook narration, and it's fantastic, and I highly recommend that version of it, lending his voice to all of these different characters. He does such a good job that I honestly forget sometimes that it is one audiobook narrator. But this is a 12-book series following our character Hiccup, who are very different from the movies that are based on these books. His family are actually part of a group of clans that train dragons. That is something that is normal for them. They are not fighting with the dragons. And he ends up getting a dragon called Toothless, and he can speak to the dragons, which is again different from the movies. And Toothless is very whiny and a bit bratty, and it's quite funny. Like, he's so different from the movie Toothless that it's quite jarring, because he is this kind of like very smug little brat of a dragon. And yeah, about this again, there's kind of like wider stakes going on, and I think the progression of this story was so fantastic. I think it had some really great character arcs from some side characters, as well as for Hiccup himself. Hiccup has a friend in this called Fishlegs, who is in the movie, but it's a different character. And Fishlegs is hilarious. He's this kind of like really like deadpan, nihilistic character, but it also is kind of bullshit that kind of like stands up for himself a bit. So he's just really a fun addition to the story. And yeah, this is a middle grade series that I absolutely will read again. I think I probably would like to physically read them, but I think I probably also will listen to the audiobooks again, because yeah, David Tennant, honestly 10 out of 10. Cressida Cow has another book series that I think David Tennant also audiobook narrated, so I also do want to listen to those by him and by her as well. Then we have a series that I have kind of spoken about, and one of the final book I had in this series was my least favorite book of last year, and that is the Girls series by Jacqueline Wilson. This is a 5-book series. The first 4 are middle grade series from like the early 2000s, and then the 5th book is a adult sequel that was released, I think 2024, I think it was released. This is a contemporary series, and I don't tend to read contemporary, middle grade, or even YA really. I listen to them on an audiobook, and so other than the 5th one, I read the 5th one. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend them, especially the original 4 trilogy haven't really aged well. I don't think the characters are very great characters. I don't think they're very good friends to our main character. The first 2, I think, were kind of like fun in the sense of like they were kind of like silly, somewhat nostalgic for like the time period of the, because again, I would have been the same age roughly as these girls at the same time period, so very time capsule in that sense. Yeah, not ones I would really recommend. But yeah, the last one made my least favorite book, or at least the second least favorite book of the year. It wasn't good. Then I have another book series that I've also, again, is one that I'm still in the world of, but this book series I have technically finished, and that is the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare. Took me a moment to remember her name then. This is the original 6-book series. This is a YA fantasy series. It is about Clary, who finds out about this world of shadow hunters, where they are these technically Nephilim children that fight demons and vampires and werewolves and all of this. It's an urban fantasy, so it's set in New York, and I actually quite enjoyed this series. This is kind of split into 2 trilogies, and I definitely preferred the first trilogy more. And the second trilogy was fine, but I definitely preferred the first trilogy more. I enjoyed the setup, I enjoyed the world, I enjoyed the kind of magic and powers. Clary as a character was annoying, and the romance is weird. Like, it was a weird choice for Cassandra Clare to make when doing this book series. If you know, you know. Yeah, it was kind of like, it was quite fun. It was, again, not one I read as a teenager. I think they came out around the time I would have been a teenager. So as an adult, it kind of had that nostalgia for a thing that I didn't read, but like kind of that time period of stuff that I was reading around that same time. I did enjoy it. I'm carrying on with the world, and yeah, it was a fun time. This is a really random one that I honestly completely forgot about, and it's a book series called Mary Jane. They're 2 novels, and they're on my sisters, and they essentially are about the character Mary Jane from Spider-Man, and they're kind of contemporary stories just about her. I think they'd probably lean slightly older, middle grade, slightly younger YA. They were hella random, if I'm completely honest with you. They're kind of about Mary Jane before she kind of knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man, just about her life really, about her like struggles with her mum, not a very good relationship, and her mum has a really bad relationship with men and money, about her going from being like quite an affluent student to going to a kind of public school. She is a dancer, and kind of her struggling with the ED, and yeah, it's so random. It's one of those books, you know, when you're like, I had completely erased from my memory until I was making this list, and I was like, oh yeah, I do remember that book. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend these books, but they're ones that I read. I read both of them. They were fine. Like, yeah, left no lasting impression on me, really, if I'm honest. And then finally, a book series that I don't know if it's complete, but I'm saying it's completed for me, and if something else comes out in this series, this would move to a DNF series for me, and that is Amari and the Night Brothers is the first one, the Amari series. I didn't love this series, which is an unpopular opinion. I know a lot of people really like this series. The writing really just didn't work for me. I just didn't think it was very engaging for me personally. I listened to the first 2. I don't think, again, I just didn't deal with the audiobook narrator, so I thought I would physically read the 3rd book, which is what I did. And yeah, the writing just really wasn't for me. I do think this story, like this trilogy, felt like a wrapped up trilogy. The kind of events that happened were wrapped up, so which is why I feel kind of like I'm glad that I did read them, so I got the end of that story, but it's not something I probably will carry on with if anything else comes out, which I think was kind of teased at the end it was. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a finished trilogy for me. But yeah, that is quite an unpopular opinion. I know loads of people love this series, but yeah, for some reason, the writing just really didn't gel with me. It was very, I feel like, over-explained a lot of the circumstances. It didn't leave the reader with a lot of time to figure things out themselves. It kind of just spoon-fed you every information. It is a middle grade series, so I do get that, but I have read other middle grade series that worked better for me, writing style-wise. So yeah, personal preference really just wasn't for me. So that was the 11 series that I have technically completed since kind of starting my booktuber journey, or since I kind of got back into reading from like 2021. So only 11, not a huge amount of number, and I have a bigger list of DNF series, which I will make a video about in a couple of weeks or so. That is the list though of completed series. Thank you guys so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in my next video hopefully soon. Bye!